I'm not going to get tired of doing my little dance, Max. You have to join me one time. Can you please?
I think, for the podcast listeners, they need to tune into a YouTube or LinkedIn live and see Jo's dance she does every week. But hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of New Frontier. We have this week with us Mike Danford, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Adviero. He plays a pivotal role in driving innovation strategies for sellers on Amazon, Walmart, and Target. He's helped multi-million dollars worth of e-commerce sales and is renowned for his expertise in, you guessed it, AI. This week, I'm very excited to be, we'll bring him on stage, but we're very excited to be talking about lesser known ways to help Amazon sellers with AI. So Mike, welcome.
Max, Joe, thanks for having me. Yeah.
It's good to see you, and you've just come back from a nice long weekend. But before we kind of dive into the topics, do you want to give like I don't know if I covered everything in the introduction. Do you want to add to that at all?
Sure, why not? Thanks for the introduction there. So I've been in the space for about 10 years. Went through the Amazon or amazing selling machine. Got my feet wet there. Started in kitchen appliances and tools, if you will. And then realized I didn't know what I was doing. It's not something I had much of a background in. So I went into supplements and graphic apparel. Had a blast through that a lot, learned a lot. And then at the same time, I was doing private label. I was also retail arbitraging Nike shoes and apparel. So that's kind of where I started to have fun and understand, how to manage larger catalogs with lots of different variants and sizes and kind of understand customer trends and how to kind of mitigate those and take advantage of those moving forward. And one of my first internal hires was around advertising. And, at that time, it was a lot simpler than it is now on Amazon and other marketplaces. But it was still one of the really expenses, higher expenses for me. And I was like, hey, this is numbers. I can figure this out. So I did, started doing it, posted some results on Facebook groups and whatnot. And folks started picking it up and like, hey, would you do it for me? Of course, we'll pay you. And then kind of the rest is history there with the agency born. So.
Wow, quite a journey. And I guess what I would love to actually dive in, and this is generally what we do with every episode, is just let's talk about AI. And so I guess my first question is actually, how do you guys use AI in Adverio? Like, what is it? What have you embedded within your agency processes?
It's really in almost every department right now for internal use, external use. We try to build things in-house to kind of answer our own questions and then figure out how we can do those at scale. A lot of goals for us are how can we do more with what we already have? And then how can we, process larger amounts of data that we historically couldn't? And then we also like to test our bias against it. Hey, this is an untrained model, and this is what we've been training internally or what we've kind of thought over the years. And it really helps to get rid of those hidden biases or kind of surface those hidden biases and have you think about it in different ways. For me personally, it's getting involved with, big data or larger data sets to understand what's going on. And then NLP is one of the areas that I really like to get into and try to understand how to leverage that across different things. We'll talk about those in a few minutes here, but it's getting less and less parts of the business that don't have some kind of AI infused into them for sure. And then it's just, how can we empower more of the team to use it and play with it, have a sandbox, if you will. And it's fun. There's a lot. It moves really fast. It moves faster than pretty much anything else I've ever dealt with. But it's great to see everyone kind of going in and head first and just kind of figuring it out and sharing. I feel like the community does a pretty good job of giving some transparency and sharing that. So that's really exciting to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, on this speed, we had Norm from Lunch with Norm on our podcast last week, and everyone always compares AI to the internet, and I said to him, how true is that? And he's like, well, it's not a fair comparison because AI just moves, 10x faster than the internet, which is super interesting. So do you have any technical talent in the agency? Do you think you're going to be hiring? Like, do you see like the future of these kind of companies are going to have like technical head of science in this kind of position in?
Yeah, we have some data science in-house, and a lot of it is knowing, what we've learned is they really having them only focus on one code, one language, one pipeline, if you will. And now it's all about, hey, they're working on this project over here. How do we link these two teams together without, influencing the other? And then understanding when do we bring certain models in so that we don't develop too fast or the cost isn't too high, et cetera. So that's really big. It's kind of like, how do we stage this? And yeah, so we have more. I mean, I have a dedicated full-time data scientist that works directly with me. I mean, all day long, we're talking about different things, different projects going on. And that started probably earlier this year. I was like, I need a full-timer finally. And then we have other teams that work on the BI and the representation and reporting for our brands, which is different. It's more like managing large data sets, how to visualize it, how to stay involved, how to, it's just a different side, the visualization of it and how to allow us to communicate with the data, to bring it more of a GPT style where anyone on the team can come in and just kind of chat with it, as opposed to having a more technical background and having to get into the code in the back end. So that's definitely where we're at right now.
And just to jump in before Joe asks, how many people in the company? Do you mind me asking? Like, how big is the company at the point where you guys say we're going to go and get data scientists in this agency as well?
Once we had a couple of dozen, I would say, that's where we started bringing on more, and we're trying to understand what is the ratio now. We have a certain number of brands. We have a catalog manager based on that. We have a brand manager based on that. So now we're thinking like data scientist is probably going to start being a part of that equation as well. We're not there right now. For right now, we're able to maintain. To our point earlier, I can't keep up, so I don't know if I can have more data scientists involved in answering more questions, because I'm a bit of a roadblock for us right now.
I have to say, like the whole sort of implication of using AI for data analysis, I find it super fascinating. And actually, a lot of our listeners are also Amazon agencies. So actually your experience and like your case studies will be really helpful. Do you mind me asking just a little bit more concrete? Can you give us some sort of like concrete case studies or use cases of how you have integrated, let's say, AI with your reporting function or your analysis function? Like how does it actually work? Because, I'm really, really keen to sort of drill into like the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So one thing that we're working on right now, we call it AMOS, Amazon Marketing Operating System. I think is what we're going to land on, hopefully. And basically it's, taking a lot of flow charts of, where are things going directionally and otherwise. And, a lot of data, there's a lot of decisions made on data. Is my conversion up, down? Is my click-through up, down? Price change, competitors price changing, et cetera. And being able to pull all that in, where it would take, several hours for us to dig in and pull those disparate data pieces together, answer those questions from, the actual platform to your reporting to a back-end report, et cetera. And now just being able to communicate with an interface that says, hey, run this diagnostic and then give me, 3 or 4 different ideas and things that are going. And for us, there's a lot of questions that are less black and white, to where we're trying to get the machine to kind of be a little more intuitive. One, based on, again, what we train it, and others to be like, hey, this is how we look at it, but look at it your own lens based on what you have, and tell us if it matches or not. So that's been fun. It's kind of like, head to head, us versus the AI, to see if we come up with a similar answer or different, and how we got there. And then another thing for us, go ahead.
Who's winning so far? Is your team winning or the AI?
Well, I'll tell you where the AI loses, and I don't know. I know Max and I have talked about this. It's more of the hallucinations. So we have, my understanding of AI at its basic level is just a prediction machine. It's giving you the answer it thinks you want based on the inputs and et cetera. So it's been told to be really confident and have a lot of bravado, right? So what we started doing in the beginning, at least in our own, is we have it display to some extent the confidence that this is the correct answer. And if it doesn't have a certain level of confidence, then tell us, hey, this is what I think, but it's a 30% chance or 80% chance or whatever it may be. And that's been really fun.
That's brilliant. I've not heard of that, and that's a brilliant idea. Sorry to interject. And does it do it accurately? Will it say, oh, I'm low confidence on this, and then it turns out that it's just giving you a hallucinated answer?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. So when you go
Mhm.
into GPT or Merlin or any of the Claude, whatever interface you're
Mhm.
using, I'd be curious. I haven't tested in a while. It's probably been about a year since we moved really to our own and developing on our own and bolting it on and having our own data sets. Um, we had to we had to force it to understand what we're saying and that it's okay to tell us if you're not confident. So in the beginning, it knew like it didn't want to tell us it was not confident because it would be in trouble, right? So that's been fun, but I don't know if usually when we first started asking GPT, I guess OpenAI in the beginning, it it wasn't allowed to tell us, and we finally started being able to get it. And now we have kind of a metric in our end. I don't. That's getting a little more technical than I do. That's what the engineers do, but it is pretty confident. We're trying to figure out what the threshold is, to where we just accept it regardless of what the
Mhm.
threshold is. But it seems to be different. And then you can have it cite or reference where it's getting the source from. That's
Mhm.
pretty good. Yeah, I mean it's a dynamic process for sure, but it's definitely
Yeah.
given us better stability in where we keep pivoting from when we get a certain answer for sure.
And which GPT are you using?
Honestly, I don't have the answer on all that. I know we're in OpenAI for most of our technical. I know we have some stuff built on top of that. I know that
Mhm.
our marketing team is really big into Merlin and using different models based on what we're doing for AI image
Mhm.
generation. I mean, we have a ton of rhinos that we produce, and those are pretty fun and different platforms. And I know that we use, I think it's whatever Metas is as well. It just different, depends on what's being trained in the back end and how it can be used for sure.
So
Mhm.
my experience, and I'm going to date this because we need to, in September, early September 2024, is AI is very good at many things. One of the things it's not good at is data analysis. And when I was doing I had to do a bunch of due diligence for my investors, and I built these models and I try to put them into ChatGPT and get it to like create visualizations of this stuff. So you put in your whatever subscriptions and visualize it and try and show this, and I found the hallucinations on data analysis were really really high.
Mm.
So I don't know, have you experienced that, you too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. Joe, you have
Go
something?
on, Michael.
Yeah, so it's we for the most part, yeah, we have to give it some original direction as to what the column is, what it is. You try to the cleaner the data is in the beginning, we've seen it
Mm.
be better. But when the data's commingled or it's not really structured really well, or you have dates and you're not really telling it how the
Mhm.
two different sets compare, like a time comparison, that seems to be an issue. But if you can clean that up, we've seen it be better.
Yeah.
And then for the visualization, yeah, I mean, there's some stuff they can throw in there with some Python to give you some stuff, but pretty limited. But sometimes it's a unique way of looking at it. You're like, oh, okay, I didn't think
Yeah.
about that. So
I,
again, it's part of the process, not the full process, right?
I found on the point you made on reference, I found that works really well. So if you use Perplexity or Gemini or something like this, and you are trying to get a fact like how many Amazon sellers are there in the US, and you ask it, it's going to give you, as you say, Mike, it's going to give you a number. That number could be completely made up. It's trained, as you say, to do something that sounds good. And then if you say, okay, point to me the reference in the article, sometimes it will just come back and say, I can't find the reference. And sometimes it will show you the reference. So it's a good way of, that's a good level one test of, is this completely hallucinated or not? I think I've never heard of this confidence score, and I really like this idea. My kind of question is, just thinking out loud, how do you know if it's hallucinating the confidence score and it's just saying, oh, I'm 30% confident? Do you have you felt that working? I know I kind of asked this question already, but
It's a great
I'm really
question,
yeah.
and this could be very much gaming us, right? As we
Mhm.
go through. To your point, send us the links, send us the references if it's external that you're pulling from,
Mhm.
which has been great. And then the other is you kind of ask it a fact check in the back end of,
Mhm.
hey, this is what we're thinking. It's not. I don't have an answer for you. We haven't tested it, but I can tell you that
Mhm.
at least we're getting the percentages, as I mentioned earlier. Like that's how we kind of understand if this is a good answer or not, or how
Mhm.
confident it may be. I do think it's pretty good at telling you when it's not confident. We are seeing that when we're like, this is a
Understood.
pretty big guess. You're like, okay, there's a pretty big delta in the confidence. whenever it's close, I think that it's because it can't be verbatim. If it could be verbatim, I think your confidence, the answer would be a little better. And I think it's having to learn like how close can I be, and like how it isn't exactly what I found. How can I say it's how can I be confident because I'm putting my own spin on it? That's a great question. I don't have that. Maybe our data scientists will be able to answer that and how they've kind of built that and trained that model. But I will definitely take that back for sure.
Can I share one more thought, and then Joe, I'll let you ask our topics because we've gone really off piece, but I enjoy. It's a really interesting conversation.
I don't think it's off piece. I think it's super on piece. Like we're actually we don't yeah no, but we have to talk more about AI and analytics, and I don't think we do that enough.
Okay.
Like we talk a lot about. So I think this is really interesting.
Fine. So ask another AI analytics question. I just have an observation that I made this kind of like the custom GPTs. We've talked about this a few times. We had a great episode on this with Andrew Bell. But I made a custom GPT to just test how, it's linked to what we can talk about, how how well an Amazon listing is on Cosmo. And we have a disclaimer in the GPT, and I'll say it again, it's not connected to Amazon. It's just taking, it's reading the science papers, it's reading some data we've given it, and it will do a 1 to 10 score. And actually, the scoring works. So you go on a list, it'll give it, we've given it what to score it on. So if it's got a lifestyle image with a target audience in it, and it explains how you use the product, blah, 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 all the stuff in the science paper, give it a 10. And if it's got no lifestyle images and, no bullet points, give it a 1. And it can do scoring well. So you use the GPT and you do the scoring, and it will give you a score. I don't know the exact way that it figures out the score, but we've given when I made it, I gave it this is what a 10 looks like, this is what a 1 looks like, and it can do scoring. So maybe the confidence score does work, but just an observation. Joe, did you have anything in terms of question?
I think when it comes, from my observation, when it comes to anything to do with data analysis and using, for example, ChatGPT, it's all about how concrete you are with the parameters or your hypothesis by which the tool should be going off on. Because the reality is that if we're talking about something like ChatGPT and you're using it for analytics, you're not using really ChatGPT. GPT sits on the bottom, but it's really connected to Python. So you're using the LLM's use of Python to do the analysis. And so it's really about how specific and how specific you are with your prompting, your instructions, and what is the sort of the route or the flow of steps that you are instructing for the AI to do. And so if you are really generic and say, okay, give me a graph of this and that, and you're not explaining enough about the process that it has to go through in terms of thinking, it's probably going to hallucinate. And it probably will hallucinate even if you're very specific. But I found that most likely if you are very instructional and you reference everything and your metrics, what it all means, then you get a much more accurate answer. So it goes back to, you've given it parameters. That's why it kind of calculates the score correctly. Right. Let's talk about other uses of AI.
Can I add one more? Sorry, Mike. You should be asking Mike questions. Mike, you're going to add one more after this. But on this point, what I found really useful with data analysis is actually it's very good at Excel formulas. So before, when I was working in Amazon, I had this guy on my team who literally, I hired him because he was super at Excel. His main job for me is as his manager, his main job was basically I'd be building Excel. I'm not good at Excel. I don't understand Excel formulas, and I'd go, "Hey, Mateus, build me an Excel formula for this," because it's really hard if you're not an expert. And now it's amazing. You can describe in natural language, "Hey, I want a formula. This is a use case. This is what's in cell ABC," and it will just do the Excel formula, and you copy and paste it, and it works almost perfectly. So that's a really, really good use case on data analysis. Mike, any last thoughts on this?
Yeah, so we're big into Google Suite or G Suite, and we do a lot of macros in Sheets, and very similar to that. The data scientist I mentioned earlier, will go through and has their own process and can go in. I think that was one of the first plugins that I used outside of the actual GPT UI. was something to do with Sheets and Excel, et cetera. And that was great. To your point, yeah, I know enough to be dangerous on that stuff. And I'll go in, you know, can kind of, here's a function I'm thinking of. It's not working the way that I want. How can you make it faster? How can you make it lighter? Those types of things. So it really helps you take that next level. And then it'll write out the macros, which is, I mean, that's getting into coding inside of the sheet. So that's great. Hey, where is this broken? What's missing? And how do we fix this? How do we make this macro lighter for, you know, our users that coming in? Okay, hey, I've got 3 different prompts that are going in here. They have to put 3 different things. I'd love to just get down to 2. How can I do that? It's always going to give you an answer to the hallucination we spoke about earlier. So you have to run it. It's going to do what you ask it to do, regardless if it's the right thing or not. And I'll stop there.
I love it. This is turning into yet another geek hour. Very good. Very good, gentlemen. Very good. Very good. All right, Mike. So, yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, you know, we like it that way. Like, let's not lie, Max. All right. I want to talk to you about, I think you guys use AI for a lot around review sentiments, review removal, and all of that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we try to look at, you know, again, larger data sets, pulling in the reviews of our products. I mean, Amazon has some of their own in the back end now, and Seller Central and other platforms as well. And just kind of understanding what the sentiment is of your own. What are we missing? How do we improve it? And kind of getting ahead of, oh, this is a bad batch, or maybe this is what do we have gaps in? What are folks talking about? Sizes, colors, styles, fit, doesn't fit, etc. And then what I like about that now is, I mean, I know you talk about Cosmo and Rufus, but the reviews are now being pulled into, you know, when you go into your Rufus on the platform. So we're seeing some folks manipulate reviews by putting certain context in there. At least we have some not 100% verifiable proof, but you know, you're seeing some bad actors come out to comment on other people's products and vice versa. And it's very interesting to see how that works and how to integrate that, and how that, you know, you have a bunch of ambassadors now. You have way more ambassadors than you thought. You know, originally it was like, hey, you got to look at the reviews and you got to read it and you got to catch it. Now you have summaries of the reviews above the reviews, and then if you go into where the FAQ is, certain categories are different, or you go straight into Rufus for the actual listing. It will give you exact feedback and where the reviews are, what they're saying, etc. And then for us, what we like to use is, if it's the correct thing, then let's bolster it and support it in, you know, our product images, content, whatever it may be. If it's going in the wrong direction, or it's, you know, it's misrepresenting for whatever reason that may be, then we try to update the listing to answer that specifically. And for us right now, you know, kind of touch on that Rufus again, we do it live demonstrations with a lot of our brands. We'll go in and say, hey, here's how you can play around with your listings. I mean, we work with large catalogs. They can't do it for there's no way to really automate it, at least that we have yet, to go into every product and ask it. But it's great to see, one, what are the questions that people are asking and or answering, whether that's on your website, on your product reviews, in your content, images, etc. And then how can we answer as many of those questions across the entire brand with a single update, one image or one bullet that updates and answers the questions. How fast is it indexed? Does it de-index? Etc. So that it has more of that confidence whenever there is an answer.
And just to jump on that, like, do you, for example, when it comes to listing optimization and you want to emphasize on, let's say, one use case or one benefit, do you replicate the same benefit both in images and bullet points, or you just kind of keep it to one and then you try to maximize your space?
So a lot of the brands that we work with will have thousands and tens of thousands of products, and they have A+ content that they can apply across multiple product lines or the brand, and you get the brand story and a few other things. So you really try to figure out, is this my entire catalog? What are the subsets of the catalog? And then it's what's the lightest lift for me? You know, and now we've been playing around with Amazon recognition and understanding it'll take the first 100 words that are available in an image. And then if there's anything that's duplicated, then, you know, it goes against your 100. So it's trying to understand how can we kind of stuff, if you will, images now without being too gaudy and cloudy, if you will, and things that you can put in an image that typically maybe you wouldn't be able to put in the back end, or you can't speak to specifically. And we do have some fringe cases where we're seeing that get picked up as well. So again, it kind of depends on the scale that we want. For one of our apparel brands, it's a very common t-shirt with jeans, right? So it's a question that pops up, but there's not really an answer in a lot of the product listings. And then there's a gender bias on that and kind of explanation as well. So if it's how can we do it? How fast can we do it? And what's their system? What is their PIM and DAM and system that they have set up to what's the easiest for them to update their formulas for their listings or bullet points or whatever it may be. And then there's rotation. And then there's like, hey, can we just put it in the description because it's, somewhat hidden? Can we put it in the metadata? Can we put it, where can we put it, to your point, without being overly disruptive? Now we have brands that will come on, again, tens of thousands of products, and they haven't touched their C1 and C2 tier, the bottom tiers that haven't moved. You go to try to optimize the listing, and you got to pull listing down and put it back up, or kind of a reset, or it goes through it because it's been so long since it's been updated. So you're like, how do I do this without having to jump over more and more hurdles? So we're trying to find those cases as well. Don't have an exact answer, at least as far as I know. I know our SEO team is kind of heading that up right now, but the use cases are endless, and it's just trying to figure out what's the quickest and fastest way to do it. It's an iterative process for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm loving these kind of super tactical and actionable tips that you're dropping, Mike. So you mentioned, just to summarize, you mentioned the Rufus questions. When you're on a listing and you use Rufus will kind of preempt a bunch of questions, like your example, does this t-shirt work with jeans? And optimizing the listings with these Rufus questions in mind obviously is going to help you rank on Rufus, right? Like that's kind of the hypothesis and what you're seeing and what we're seeing. And the second kind of actual tip we talked about is kind of this, we talk about it quite a lot, but this visual SEO, right? Recognition, it can read the keywords in the images. You want to have that present in infographics and other places, so that the weight Amazon is giving, we don't know the exact weighting, but definitely more weighting towards the images as well as the written context SEO, and having both of those with with the keywords. I'm not a fan of the word stuffing keywords, but having the key, let's say the intent of the customer or whatever else, why they want to buy the product in the image as well as the text is important. Before the podcast, you sent me, going back to this kind of Rufus and question one, you sent me a really interesting example of how Rufus hallucinates. So do you want to go into a bit more details of that example? And
you have to refresh my memory a little bit. I remember sending it over, and I know it was an apparel thing because I sent it to the brand. But I know your comment was specifically on the hallucinations. And I believe it was something. Can you refresh my memory? Because
so basically, it was you were kind of live interacting with Rufus on a Loom video, and you were saying, "Hey, does this product look good? It's a t-shirt. Does it look good in jeans?" And Rufus goes, "Oh yeah, like there's plenty of images on the plenty of people in the reviews have used this product with jeans, and there was nothing, I've basically no reviews on the ASIN whatsoever. Like definitely none people talking about wearing the t-shirt with jeans." So it's really interesting to coming back to the topic we talked about of hallucinations. It's just an interesting thing that's happening right now.
Yeah, now I remember that. I forgot that it hallucinated, and it definitely said in the reviews. And
it says in the reviews, and there weren't any. Yeah, so it's like
where we're at right now, and I don't have an exact answer, but I think we're pretty close to having an answer. Is one, we know it goes to your website as well, so maybe the reviews on the website for that product, I don't know, has it in there. And then the other part is, I think is what I mentioned in my video is, okay,
that's
thousands of what's that, Max?
That's a generous interpretation. Like you think it's connecting externally and looking at external reviews.
It's that smart, Max. Obviously, Rufus is that smart.
Yeah.
That's generous.
Opinion, but we can come back to that. Maybe not on this episode, but I'll show you an example. But anyways.
Okay, well, fine, yeah.
So I think what my hypothesis on this is that the brand has other reviews and other comments. That's what I mentioned in my video, because we do have repetitive after time pictures, and we even have images of certain products where the male or female is wearing jeans in the image, etc. So I think it's picking up some fringe interpretations, if you will. I'm okay with the assumption. But in that moment, that's what we're trying to show brands is like, go and play, ask one, look at the bubbles, see what it's popping up, so you kind of understand what the category is. Also go to your competitors. I believe I did that in that video as well. See what they're getting asked. If you're getting asked the same questions, see how it interacts and how it responds. And is there an answer? And when there's not an answer to something that's common, give it an answer. Try to answer those questions. And so that's where we're at right now. That's kind of the process.
Yeah. And I would just add to that. I think we are currently, the current AI like GPT-4o is probably one of the most advanced ones. But Amazon will not be using that, but they'll be using something. They'll
be using Claude, Max. They'll be using Claude.
That.
They might be using Claude. I would imagine for Rufus, they built their own, like entirely their own thing and like trained their own model. But anyway, I think it like the roughly like the kind of performance will be as good as GPT-4o or worse. You right. But if you listen to what OpenAI is saying, like they know, of course, they know these hallucinations are a problem. They're trying to go to AGI, and like the next step towards AGI is that are agents, right? Who can like, rather than just like predicting what you want to hear, like the next words, like what are the most likely next words to make the user happy, as you said, Mike. They're actually going to kind of understand the query and break it down into different sections, and then complete those sections. And this will be like GPT-5 or 6, and then the hallucinations, these will go. Like it's a feature of like of the LLMs that we're using now, but like all the major scientists are saying like LLMs are actually a really bad way of doing stuff, and like they've got different models which they're kind of live doing now, which are not going to hallucinate. So I would say like this is kind of a very much Q4 2024 thing, and like if we're doing this podcast in 2025, like mid 2025, like no one's going to worry about this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the whole point, is like, they let Rufus out so that as many people can use it as possible. It learns and becomes smarter and smarter. I mean, if we think about where was even ChatGPT 3.5 like a year ago, and it wasn't, I mean, it was smart, but it was still hallucinating like hell. And so where we are in like a little more than a year since then. So I think the whole idea is that the more people use it, the more also people add context to their listings, the smarter it's going to get. And then I think it will be probably in just a quarter, it will be far better.
So, Mike, the other thing that we talked about customer. Anything you want to add on customer review sentiments and kind of using Rufus for that on this topic?
No, I mean, that's it. We got some other projects, but it's a little early to speak to technically, but yeah.
So the other kind of one of the other kind of discussion topics that you mentioned, a lesser known way of using AI is this market basket analysis for product development. So do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with large catalogs, which is actually good. So we get a lot of data, and it's specifically Amazon's market basket analysis, where they give you the top 2 other ASINs that are purchased and combinations, etc. And we've built a dashboard for that, and we give it out for free and whatnot. And then, but we aren't able to layer in our AI machine, if you will, on top of that. But it's really good of showing, hey, this ASIN is commonly purchased with this ASIN or these sets of ASINs, and that's great. And you can kind of go in, and you can sometimes get the brand, and then if you're able to pull the title in through some other data points, etc., you can pull it in. Where we like to go is looking outside the brand and the ASIN. What are the frequent purchases of other different types of products? So I gave an example a few months ago. We have a brand that's selling sage sticks. And you go in, you can see that, one of the top commonly purchased is a sage stick with a Palo Alto stick or whatever. You go in and look, and it looks like, it's like, okay, that's one brand, and it's, 2% of the total combined sales. But when you go back and you look, like, holy cow, it's like 30% of all of the cross sales are Palo Alto sticks or something of that nature. And then you ask the brand, hey, do you produce this? Can you produce this? Do you make this? And the answer is no. And you're like, well, you probably should figure out how to virtual bundle, add it to the listing, etc. So, and then a brand since that has now released that, and the market basket's much higher. The average order value is much higher, if you will. And it's just those little insights and how to get that larger set, where the human would be very difficult to go in and look at all that and pick up those little nuances outside of those. And then there's a lot of other things we can do in the market basket analysis, but for us, it's when you have thousands of ASINs and you show these matrices and heat maps and stuff, it kind of helps you guide and understand what that is and like what's statistical significance and things you can't just visualize in a single, view, if you will. It's a dynamic process for sure. Some brands are more into it than others. And we also kind of pull in the product opportunity explorer and a few other data sets. So we'll kind of pull into that, which is pretty exciting as well. And then, the search query performance, just kind of layering all that data in and then kind of having it, feed off of each of the reports and kind of marry it together. That's the fun part right now. It's like, how can these reports come together to be more informed and individually? So and that's kind of where we're playing around with it for sure.
So do you feed this all in one centralized dashboard, or do you feed it into, let's say, a model like GPT and then try to categorize in some way, mash it up? How are you using then the AI, and how do you process all of this data?
Each brand is a little different. So for now, it's definitely separate. It's just easier. It's lighter, manipulate, ask questions, and it's more standardized, if you will. And then it's one, understanding what the brand can and can't do. How fast can they produce something? Are they hungry to find new products, or they want to just kind of improve the ones they have? How easy is it for them to come up with a new formulation, or all of that process, and then what's their goal, and etc. And that's kind of it depends answer, if you will. Again, as I mentioned, we're trying to figure out when to pull all of it together. What's the best way to pull it all together? Is there a particular order to put it together that's better than the others? Kind of building that recipe, if you will, and that flow of how to communicate. I love when we get the question, again, we work on an apparel and they're like, hey, we're in this, sub niche and style of apparel or shirt or design or whatever it is. And we have thousands of more reviews, we're price comparable, whatever, but this other design or whatever's taken off. And these types of reports will help you see that. And then it helps you kind of understand how can you put certain styles and designs together where they're looking for this. And yeah, it's not the exact same thing, but it's so close to this over here. So you can kind of piggyback that as well. So it's a lot of bundling and merging and being creative in how you stack the attributes for a particular parent, if you will. And then it's combating Amazon. We have a bedding brand that is constantly getting their parents broken apart, where it's like a style design, if you will, but they have a quilt or they have a comforter and they have a duvet, and Amazon wants those separately. And that kills the basket value. So we're trying to record those and show and say, hey, Amazon, stop breaking these apart because it's actually making you less money because it's making us less money. That kind of thing. So I don't know. Similarly, we're also trying to feed back anything that we have into Amazon seller support, trying to get it up as high as possible, put it in a queue, but we were kind of hands tied, if you will. And then the other is, I'll stop there.
So you're using, just so I can understand, you're using data to understand what bundle listings you should create, either new listings or new products, or just existing stuff, bundle it together.
Both, yes.
What are some of the key metrics and data that you look at that informs you to say, hey, X should be bundled with Y?
First, are your products commonly, are competitors' products commonly being added to your products, and you offer those products? Yes or no? And if that's the case, and that's the easiest thing, you already have it live. Do we virtual bundle it? Do we bundle it? Do we merge it together? Do we create a new parent? What's the easiest lift, fastest way to do this? And then can you do both? And then the other is, okay, 30% of your orders that are purchased from your product for this, whatever it may be, your competitors are putting these in there. Can you do that? And it's really that order. It's the weight of the lift, the speed of the lift that you can do. And what's the cost to do that? Is there a way to kind of trial it, et cetera? And it depends. We have brands that launch hundreds of products every single month, and they're more of a spaghetti on the wall approach, where now we're like, hey, look at your product opportunity explorer to help that infuse your, so you're throwing less spaghetti on the wall or more cooked spaghetti on the wall. Hopefully those analogies work, but Amazon's giving us way more data than it used to. It doesn't do a good job, or generally they don't do a good job of representing or visualizing it or putting it together and organizing it. So we're trying to do that as well. And then what can you do with that? And if you're not doing anything with it, then you're missing opportunity. We also have to be careful not to have shiny object syndrome, where we're constantly chasing whatever's being out and be like, it's kind of nice, but what am I able to do with this? That's definitely the double-edged sword, if you will.
Super interesting. I actually want to touch upon another topic that I think a lot of sellers are thinking about struggling with, which is pricing. So are you guys using any sort of AI or just general pricing tools? Are you using any AI to analyze pricing? How do you tackle that?
Yeah, so we work with some vendors right now. We have a couple of head-to-heads on different catalogs and brands, different price points to the term is dynamic pricing. And I just saw a report, I think it was this morning or yesterday, how the Fortune 500 companies are speaking about dynamic pricing and surge pricing based on demand and et cetera, kind of like Uber, et cetera. I'm just trying to figure it out. And a lot of brands that we work with, when we come in, we'll ask like, hey, when's the last time you updated your prices on, your bottom tier of your products? And they're like, oh, we haven't done it. It's been a couple of years. It's been a year, it's been 6 months, et cetera. So we're trying to, everybody's all about advertising. If they're advertising, they're all about testing it and moving it and pulling all those levers. And then the next more complicated piece sometimes is getting a budget towards optimizing the listing. And actually, I think that with the Cosmo and the Rufus and that integration directly in the listing, I think that's actually making it easier to pitch and understand, hey, you got to, it's here. You have to do something. So you got to get a sliver of their budget for that. And then the last one is dynamic pricing. And it's, in the beginning, it's, repricing is all about trying to win the buy box against your competitors, et cetera. But dynamic pricing is more about what's going on in the market. What are you trying to do? What's your supply and demand? What's your demand elasticity, price elasticity, and understanding those. A lot of brands do, they'll make the jumps or the deltas in the pricing too big, or they don't do it for long enough, to have a good, amount of data to understand, and too much recency bias versus data, validation and confidence, if you will. So also, you don't have to, little things can go a long way. Pennies on a up or down on a product can make a big impact. And it's also about like pulling in what your competitors are doing. And in the part that we're trying to get into right now, that these service providers, we haven't seen it yet. We've kind of run it by them to see if they can do it. It's difficult, is downloading the last couple of years of pricing data for your competitors and seeing, this is where the AI comes in, seeing if you can figure out their cadence. Like, okay, they always have a promotion this week, or they always do a promotion every 6 weeks, or hey, based on their inventory levels, their pricing goes up or down. So can we like pull that in and be like, hey, they're getting ready to price hike or drop their price. Should we follow? Should we beat on? Like all of that's being brought into it now. And it's really, I was talking about the other day, it's kind of like the new PPC. It's the new game of bidding. Your bids are in PPC if they're for placements and such, but your price is kind of the same way as well. And it's a little early for us. We have some great data, as another way to add the bottom line when they've already maxed out their advertising, or they've got a good SEO plan in place, product launches, et cetera. It's just another lever to pull that I wish more, maybe I don't want more sellers to pull it unless they work with us, but it's an opportunity for us right now, and it's fun. So
just to jump on this, like when I've analyzed some of my clients pricing, what I sometimes spot is that even just changing their pricing with a couple of pennies down has such a dramatic effect, because obviously Amazon somehow bakes it in their algorithm in terms of ranking, and it can literally just shoot you up in terms of ranking just because of those few pennies. So you don't have to like really sacrifice on margins. It's almost just seeing what is the sweet spot between obviously consumer psychology about price and also the Amazon algorithm.
Yeah, getting that lowest price in 30-day badge by just flipping it down a few pennies is remarkable. And then charm pricing. I mean, some brands swear by it, and charm pricing is ending in a 9 or 8, 7, 6, whatever it may be, and playing around with that and kind of debunking it. And then we have a lot of brands that are afraid to increase their price, and we're like, hey, we're going to do it. Let's see what happens. So we just had a brand in the CPG, kind of the really healthy CPG products. Nature, keto, all the clean stuff, and it's considered a premium brand. It's a premium product, and the audience kind of knows that, but they were scared to kind of go into that. So I think they've added 15% or so to their price. They've had the price pretty consistent for 3 or 4 years, and it's actually increased the purchase rate just by showing that validity and understanding that these are real, genuine ingredients. I feel like, and we don't know. There's a lot of interpretation. We have to run a focus group to find out, but it's also helped help them have the assurance and not be afraid to move the price up or down. And I say this where a lot of people are concerned is like, once I lower my price, I have to stay there. No, it's okay. You can move it back up, or once it's moved up, and it, like, how much can you move? It's a big question they don't really understand. So since they don't understand, they just don't do anything, which I think is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. Mike, I think this has been one of the most tactical and kind of actionable podcasts we've done. And just, I'd say anyone listening, if you liked it, give us 5 stars and follow for more. But just to read back to you the notes I've taken from your tips. Number 1, get confidence scores, or start experimenting with confidence scores for your GPT answers. Number 2, use Rufus questions to optimize your listing. Go and see what Rufus is asking and kind of work that in. That's going to help with, optimizing for Cosmo and intent-based matching. Number 3, add text to images for Recognite. I think lots of people have kind of covered this, but you mentioned it again. It's something really important. Number 4, use AI to do basket analysis of what competitors, what customers are adding competitor products and do that for bundles. And number 5, do kind of use AI again with the analysis to understand the cadence of competitor pricing and base your strategy on that.
I have a feeling that Max has been a very good student at school, and he's an avid note taker.
Straight A-star student. Anyway, so
use an AI note taker for this, Max? Or
no.
I
promise you, no AI note taker. I just anyway. There's a question here. Any other actionable tips beyond those ones that you want to share as we come towards the end?
I mean, there's so many. Just don't be afraid of it. It's not going anywhere. And I think for us, what we are trying to learn, we talked about earlier in the episode, is it moves so fast. So, and I believe it was Jeff Bezos. I need to go find out the answer to my question or my comment here. But I believe he mentioned, how you have that competitive advantage and edge is not focusing on the shiny new things and things that are coming out, but focusing on the things that are going to be here for 5, 10, 15 years and doing those. And having those foundational blocks. So it's, as I mentioned earlier, the reason that we're focusing on these certain points is, customers are always going to be sensitive to price. That's not going anywhere, right? They're always going to have questions about the product. The more answers that you can provide before they purchase, the friction reduces. And then the customer service is much better. So it's like, let's focus on those things. These are awesome and powerful tools that we've been given. We didn't have these, a year and a half ago, a year ago. And go pre-COVID, et cetera. And it's just using them to answer more questions for yourself internally as well. Speeding up your processes. I think a lot of folks have fear of, there are certain roles that will be obsolete, but I also think that they will be elevated. The level of a developer skill set now is going to be elevated. They can do the more complex part that we're talking about, where the machine can't do that, but it can do the simplicity, the simple or the lower level tactics, whatever it may be, coding, whatever it may be. And I think it's just embrace it. It's not going anywhere. My wife has been anti-AI. She's in the medical space.
My husband as well. He is very anti-AI. So
So I enjoy it. I think it's great. It's going to take on it's going to be different. Every 6 months, there's another, milestone that's going to be hit, and we don't even know what's coming next. It's all hypothetical, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think people listening will tell from the discussion that, all of us have experimented with this, and you can kind of get a sense of what works and what doesn't. So I wouldn't trust the AI to build my visual graph, but I would trust it to create my Excel formula. And knowing that gives you an advantage, because you can augment certain parts of your work, right? Okay, it's going to be great at writing my blog. Claude, write my blog, would be beautiful. But if I'm doing something else, it won't be. Joe, any action, like super actionable or tactical tips to add to those 5 from you that you wanna put in?
You're putting me on the spot. I actually would kind of contradict this. So I would say use AI to do like analytical data, like use it, but just know how to analyze data. Like this is the thing. Like this is what I say when I train people. Is you can't expect that an AI tool will be a great analyst if you are not already a great analyst who knows what they're looking for in the data. Like how would any AI know what is actually an insightful piece of information? So I think that's my number 1 tip is like, just know what you're asking for, and you shall get what you are asking.
Yeah, I'll piggyback that. As I mentioned earlier, if you can give it a flow chart, a very clean set of conditions, it will answer those questions pretty confidently, especially if you let it know where to look and when to look. And then once
you're giving ChatGPT a literal flow chart and saying, this is the flow, follow this flow.
Yeah. Hey, go. These are steps. Follow these steps and do it 1,000
written
times.
or visual, like a visual flow chart.
Generally in a spreadsheet.
Okay.
So that we feel that's been cleaner. Visual, you can do it. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't tried. Those 2 systems don't communicate, but spreadsheets are easier for us to upload and communicate in the back end through the API, et cetera. Python can manage it, et cetera.
There you go. There's a 6th tip. So flowcharts via Excel for ChatGPT prompts. Love it.
Yep.
Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Always love talking to a fellow kind of nerd in the space who's just like fully in and experimenting on so many stuff, and I think really valuable for our listeners. So if people want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
Yeah, so obviously on LinkedIn, and then if you go to our adverio.io/downloads or on our homepage, you'll see free tools. A lot of the tools that we've talked about here, a lot of our early pilots are available there, free to download, free to access and use as you see fit.
Amazing. That's very generous of you. I'm surprised you're not wrapping it up as a SaaS thing, but maybe that comes later. But yeah, Mike, been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for coming.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.